Keep your hands and head inside the vehicle at all times. Buckle your seatbelts, check your mirrors, sit on back and relax. It's lights out and away we go for the Tall and Short of It podcast. Welcome everybody to another episode of the Tall and Short of It podcast, coming to you live from the First Aid Station. I'm your host, Justin.
And I'm Aaron. Welcome back, everyone, for another week of the podcast. We have off time from F1. We've got some little tidbits here and there to get into, but lots of League of Legends playoffs that we want to discuss for sure. LCS finals, LCK finals, LPL upper bracket semifinals, lower bracket finals. Lots of good games, some Magic, Pioneer, and Commander. We've got a lot still, nonetheless, on an off week. But Justin, it's good to be here. Good to see you.
Yeah, jam-packed episode, I think. But I agree. Good to see you, my friend. Good to be back. Yeah, let's just get right into it. Let me start with my Rose, Thorn, and Seed, if you don't mind.
Sure.
I'll start with my seed here. So I'm pretty sure every week and / weekend coming up, there's some sort of Magic the Gathering going on, be it Pioneer weekend. We've got the March of the Machine pre-release tomorrow. That it sounds like a bunch of us are meeting up at the game store to play some sealed. So that'll be fun. But yeah, so my seed here is just April's just going to be packed with Magic the Gathering more than I think it's ever been. Just being that thinking about the store as somewhere to go to play has just opened up a whole world of possibilities. So that's pretty cool. And then to tie in my Rose as well is the March of the Machines pre-release tomorrow. So it's the set releases next weekend, but you can go and play sealed at your local game stores with the new cards.
Gotcha.
Kind of before it drops in regular stores. So that'll be fun to just get your hands on the new cards and see what it's like to play. And then my Thorn here for the week, my inspection's past due, and I made an attempt to kind of organize it better this year, where I kind of put some reminders in my calendar. But those reminders came and went. I kicked them right out the door and said, "Who put you here? I don't need you." And now my inspection's past due. So I think next year I'm going to make an maybe even more rigorous attempt at, getting some things scheduled and having it be less of a surprise when these things are past due.
This was the first year that I have not let my inspection expire by 2 months or so.
Hell yeah.
I just there were a couple of years where I would just be driving along and just for no particular reason I would just glance over towards the inspection sticker and go, "Oh, that was a couple months ago."
Mm-hmm.
And so that's happened. This year was actually the first year that I have had my car inspected on time that I can remember. I was going in for an oil change and just decided it was a month before my inspection was up. And I was like, I don't feel like coming back here in a month. So I just did it a month early. So is what it is. But yeah, that's one that it slips through the brain. I'm not focused on looking at the little stickers when I'm hopping in and out of my car every time. So
yeah, it can just fly by like that. But I'm proud of you. I'll have to maybe do as good as you have this
one time.
yeah. But yeah, that's my Rose, Thorn, and Seed here, man. Tell me about your week.
Nice. So my week's been pretty good. It's been I'll kind of talk about my Thorn, but my week has been a mix of medical stuff, kind of nothing crazy, but I had the reason that we are recording a day late for everyone listening is I had a CPR course for work that they had set up. Residents it was like an event for residents, employees, everything, and they wanted as many of us as possible to get CPR certified. I've been CPR certified before, so I went through and did that class again. But I also had a doctor's appointment this week. Unfortunately, at the end of the year, I forget if I mentioned this ever, but my primary care doctor, the office just closed. And so my doctor that worked at that office just was like, oh, I'm just going to go do this remote work thing. And I'm like, cool, I don't have a doctor anymore, which I need to get my medicine.
Right.
So finally found a primary care doctor and all. He's kind of out of the way, but went smoothly and everything, but got my medicine. Just so happens that once a year I have to pay my deductible for my medicine. And so it was a nice chunk of change yesterday when I picked up my prescription at CVS for them to just be like, it says this is this much. Is that right? And I was like, oh, yeah, my insurance does that once a year. Yep, that's right. And so,
Damn, dude.
yeah. So, and then on top of all of that, Colleen has been sick with just like a nasty chest cold cough thing all week. She's been feeling crummy. I felt fine. It doesn't seem to be contagious, whatever she's had, but I just feel for her. It's been rough, and I would be similarly just sick of hacking up a lung every so often randomly. So it's been a weird medical doctor week, I guess, over our way.
Sure. Well, I'm happy to hear that it's like nothing serious. Hopefully, the cough clears out pretty quickly. But damn, just a big old. So they force you to pay your deductible effectively.
So I had my insurance for whatever reason has a deductible for prescriptions.
Okay.
So there's like deductibles for other things like hospital bills or like this or that, whatever. But there's also one with mine for prescriptions. So before my copay and just like paying my copay to refill my prescription kicks in, I have the like 1 month that they're like, well, the actual prescription costs like twice my deductible.
Mm-hmm.
So they're like, you don't have to pay the full price for that, but before we can just do your like medicine copay, you got to get hit with the deductible first. So once a year, I'm just like throwing a couple Benjamins over the CVS counter and walking away and going, man, maybe I should sell some of these to get my money back. But I wouldn't do that. It's a joke. But I'm just like, man. So yeah, my insurance for the most part pretty decent, but when it comes to that once a year, it caught me off guard too. I was like, I really had to think about it when the guy was like, is this price right? Like, do you actually, I think his mind went to, do you pay this every month? And I was like,
Sure.
oh, no. This is once a year. And then the rest of the time I still pay just less. So,
Damn, man.
yeah, so definitely a thorn between that. It's never too exciting. Just feeling like you're throwing away some money, but is what it is. We moved forward 11 months of not having to do that. So, but my rose is also somewhat medical related, but that is that Senna is doing a lot better. She's gotten the pep back in her step. She is really just doing well, back to her normal self and everything, like nothing happened. She's still got her little scar on her tummy and everything from her surgery, but I'm just happy that she's not really noticing anything. She's just kind of living life, not going after it. It's not bothering her. So good things with that recovery and all.
Nice. Very good.
And to round out the medical the medical hour here, for my seed, I had talked about it a little bit. I wanted to get out and do some running with the weather and everything, and so I went last weekend. I haven't gotten to this week, but last weekend I went for about 1.5 miles. nothing crazy, nothing super fast paced. I wasn't trying to set any land speed records, but I was a little bit sore the next day, but not like pain with my knees like
Mm-hmm.
I've had. So I think maybe if I continue to just ease myself into it and just gradually build up, then maybe I will be able to rebuild some of that strength and everything that maybe is causing some of the pain when I do just randomly go for a run and kind of overdo it as I tend
Mm-hmm.
to do. So I'm excited. I think most of the soreness was honestly I went to a Phillies game later that night and we were standing room only tickets, so I was standing and I think just
Sure.
tiredness and standing for that long, I was like, I think that may have been more of the soreness than the actual run. So
Yeah, definitely.
good progress, and I feel like there may be potential that I'll be able to run again without pain down
Mm-hmm.
the line here and actually run as much as I would like to, because that has been in the back of my mind for a bit that I'm like, oh, if I go and just start trying to run and everything, I'm just going to be in pain. So like, why would I do that?
Sure. Have you thought about like getting imaging done of your knee in any capacity, like an X-ray or an MRI, just for the peace of mind of saying like, yeah, yeah, there's nothing wrong here. It's just, X.
I have. It's I'm really bad. I've talked about like I say that I should get a massage all the time and get like my back worked on and everything, and I just don't. I don't
Sure.
make good time to actually do a lot of these self-care like things that would be good to do. So has that crossed my mind to like go either to a podiatrist or like somewhere and get it checked out, or
Mm-hmm.
I think podiatrist is right, or either way, orthopedic
Yeah.
doctor or something. Um,
A
it's
knee
crossed,
guy, a guy that knows knees.
yeah, not just looking at him. He really knows the ins and outs.
Yeah. Yeah, we
But
we need a guy that studied a knee before.
yeah, everyone should have a good knee guy. That's all I'm
I
saying.
agree. Yeah.
Uh, but yeah, I just haven't ever been like, oh, I should actually take the time to like. Anytime those things cross my mind too, I'm like not in a position where I'm like, oh, let me like look. I'm not ever like sitting on the couch and being like, oh yeah, I should see if I could find a knee guy. So it it will probably be something that I end up doing at some point. I
Well,
just
just
haven't done it.
hopefully, before it's like too late, you don't want to just
Right.
like take a tight turn and
Yeah. Well, it's weirdly more my like um front of my knee than the back. So
okay.
I don't think I have much. I think I have decently strong ligaments. M and ACLs I think would be the two. MCL ACL.
Oh wait, so you're saying, and I'm gonna totally derail us, but you're saying like you just have like a soreness? Is it kind of like a burn on the top of your kneecaps?
No, it's like a knife in the inside back of my kneecap. So like your kneecaps like little half thing on the front. It's like in the
Yeah.
top back of it. Like
Interesting.
yeah.
Gotcha. Okay.
So won't it didn't derail us too far, but yeah, it's weird. I assumed that I had bruised the back of my kneecap before when it happened initially because I went really hard into like heavy long distance running with like no build up, and
Gotcha.
so I was like, oh, I probably just my body wasn't used to this, and the motion bruise of the bone flexing and everything and
Mm.
the pounding just bruised the back of my kneecap. Oh, once the bruise heals, like I'll be good. And of course that's me knowing nothing about knees. But
Sure.
but yeah, it's kind of what I had tried to discern, but it might not be because just the other week, like I said, I ran for maybe half a mile with Senna, but it was like pretty quick, pretty like heavy pounding and stop and go and everything. And that same pain flared up pretty quickly. So
Yeah. Gotcha. Well, yeah, we may need to find you a knee guy, dude. We can't be living with that.
gonna need a knee guy, but that's a lot of a medical junk and chit chat and all before we get into the meat of the podcast. But I appreciate you humoring me and my bad knees.
Deb, I literally didn't think we would be doing this podcast in the first aid station. Like literally, that was just kind of a joke.
Oh, I know. When you said it, I was like, "Oh, this is kind of perfect." So
he's like, he doesn't even understand.
"Oh yeah," I was like, I was ready to go, but
oh damn, that's crazy. All right, I'm with you though. But you know who hasn't been in the aid station?
Who's that?
Any F1 drivers, because it's an off week.
It's true. So we have some motorsport stuff. We do have a little bit of motorsport action this coming weekend. We have the IndyCar Acura Grand Prix of Long Beach this weekend, who in the past 3 races, I believe has been, I'll double check, but it has been won by Joseph Newgarden last year, who is, I think, in the lead in the standings at the moment. Colton Herta the year before that, Alexander Rossi the previous race before that, which was 2 years ago. So thus far into the IndyCar season, I was wrong. Pato Award, Joseph Newgarden is in 4th at the moment in the standings. But yeah, just excited to have some type of racing. So there will be some IndyCar this Sunday for the actual race, and then full weekend with practice, qualifying, all that good stuff as well.
Damn it, that track's crazy. Looking at it, it's got like this really long back straight after this like tight little hairpin. Man, that is crazy.
It's
overall,
a wonky one.
It kind of seems like it'll be a pretty fast track. I'm kind of excited. I don't think I've ever seen them go racing here.
Yeah, I think I may have caught a little bit or maybe some highlights from last year's race, but it definitely I'm just love racing. I'm excited to take a look at IndyCar a little bit more, and to like, because there was no F1, I was looking to see if there was going to be IndyCar or Formula E or anything else. I was like, oh, now I'm actually like prepared that I can be like, yes, I want to watch this on Sunday. So, so that should be fun. But moving over to F1, just some little tidbits. But Toto recently officially became a billionaire, as he owns 33% of the Mercedes F1 team, and their valuation and everything has been significant, along with I guess previous and other endeavors and whatnot. So Toto's a very wealthy man, but I don't think I had realized that he was a co-owner of the team. I'm not sure. Did you know that he was? Like, I wouldn't have been surprised if he had like some like shares in it from, or small stake from being the team principal, but 33% was way more than I would have imagined.
To be fair, it was likely a factoid that I had heard at some point, like either on the broadcast or like in a like on an interview or whatever. But no, I can't say it was like part of my working knowledge of his his situation.
Okay, so, and the reason that made me just kind of pause for a second and think is, do you think that Toto would ever really willingly give up the reins as the team principal for Mercedes? Because obviously, it's not at that point. He's still a pretty young guy in the grand scheme of things and everything. He's probably like 50-ish years old, somewhere in that ballpark.
He's a good-looking 50.
Let's see how old he is.
57.
51.
Okay.
So, um, Christian Horner's 49. So,
Okay.
it was one of those pop ups like also search for. But yeah, anyway, I was thinking about it and like, I mean, I guessed that he was about 50. I'm like, maybe in a little while down the road, he might not be um, the best person. Just like as times change, things progress. Like, I don't know, maybe it's not going to be the best fit for him, but I don't know if I can imagine him ever being like, oh, I'm going to step down from this role and let someone else take my place. It was kind of a weird thought. It's like the same kind of thought process as like Lewis retiring. It's just like a weird thought kind of cuz it I don't think anyone really knows the ripples that would cause on the grand scheme of things
In
around
the
the
grand calculus of the universe.
just in the grand calculus of F1, like that
Sure.
would create a huge just cascade of things changing, I would imagine. I don't think there's necessarily a great just, oh, well, you just pop this one person in that place and then like that person's going to have to come from one of these teams. I don't see Mercedes just being like George Russell and yes, Stoffel Van Dorn. Let's go. So it whether it's Lewis retiring at some point, which I'm sure he will, obviously, who knows if that'll be sooner or later, but or Toto. I was like, he owns part of the team. He can kind of just make himself be team principal as long as he wants.
Yeah, I yeah. That is definitely a possibility. However, it would be so being that he's a part owner of the team, his bottom line goes up if everybody else's does too. So if Mercedes like just starts losing or isn't like right on the the cutting edge of what's going on, it seems like they would be self-aware enough to realize like where those issues may be coming from, and then if it is a lack of leadership or experience from Toto, he himself would have a vested interest to like you said step down or give the reins to somebody else, and it
Okay.
wouldn't be, I think for somebody like that, it wouldn't be this like ego hit, this like swallow your pride thing. If anything, he would see it as just a smart business move, thereby like, yeah, I do know what I'm doing because I know I don't know what I'm doing enough to still lead this team. I'm going to put these three people in the position. We're going to rectify the issues that are going on. I take a another leadership position, obviously, if he's still like involved in like, budgeting or whatever his role would be, I don't
Mm-hmm.
know. But it seems like an easy choice if the alternative is I don't get to be in that position, but we get to win, or I get to be team principal and lose. I bet Toto would take win every single time.
Yeah. Okay.
Hmm.
That's definitely fair. I think that's a good point because he is obviously a smart businessman. He's made it to being a billionaire. He's made good decisions and all.
Hmm.
But yeah, I guess it would be also like protecting his own investment of like, hey, this is the best for me financially as well. So
Well,
that makes
and then
sense.
to comment on like what you were saying about like ripples in F1, like there would be some kind of obvious power vacuum when Lewis leaves. There could be a similar type power vacuum if like, one of these powerhouse team principals end up leaving as well.
Yeah.
But there would be something to say where maybe you can only actually do so much from the role of team principal. Maybe that actually is like a pretty small hat to wear, and somebody like Toto, along with Lewis, could be thinking about Formula One like in the long term. What could their legacy be? So what if they, come off the racetrack and work behind the scenes to put ripples that improve everybody's well-being in some important way? I could see that being an avenue, maybe not for Toto, but just for some of these individuals in general, because you have to think, just because they stop winning in Formula One, they're still going to have that, like, how can I improve? How can I keep finding other like great minds to work with and this and that. So you have to assume like somebody built like that is just going to be built to keep it going.
Yeah, that I think that's a good point. I agree with you. I think like with both Toto and Lewis, they are that kind of mind. It's a mindset.
Yeah.
It's a lifestyle. It's not a phase.
Right.
But yeah, to kind of go along with that, like Toto said this past week in an interview as well. He's like, we don't have plan B if Lewis does retire. He's like, I don't want to talk to any other drivers. Our plan is to like keep moving forward with Lewis until at least for the meantime. So yeah, I think on both sides they're looking at it like, yes, I want to do the best work I can in whatever area that I'm in. And if I'm not doing that, then maybe that's where they'll shift to something new. But another little quick hitter that I thought was kind of fucking crazy, to be honest, was it started coming through my like Twitter sphere and F1 feeds and everything that apparently Charles Leclerc's home address somehow got out to the public in some capacity, and so he has been like dealing. He made a post on his Instagram, like a just black background, white text wall that is like, "Hey, my address got out. That does not invite people to go there and to ring my doorbell and to like try and get me to come out. It's like, if you see me in the street and you want to take a picture, I absolutely will. But like, don't come to my house. I will not come down and meet you. That's creepy." is the gist of the whole thing. And
Sure.
I mean,
I
I just
agree,
think it's crazy. Like, because I guess it's like with any professional athlete, there's always going to be people who are like just fanatical about their fandom and whatnot. But I mean, I have at least seen in other videos, there have been like times when Charles is like going through the grid or like on a race weekend, like interacting with fans. He's had fans try and kiss him. He's had fans try like really get up into his personal space in like and it looked like he would consider an uncomfortable way. And so it's kind of like nutty. I'm so used to the part of the fandom that is like just like hardcore, like about the rivalries and the racing, and I don't like your driver and you don't like my driver, and like I see so much of that. I hadn't even like considered that there is a weird like side of the Formula One fandom where people are just like think that the drivers are like, I don't know, these like pop stars, whether that means they like want to date them or whether that like their heart throbs or whether it's their like they just like whatever it is, are obsessed with these people. And so it's kind of nutty that that he would even have to deal with that. And like, fuck whoever let his address out. That's fucked. I'd move.
Big time agree. Well, Yeah, I think you would have to, because like, just because it was leaked today, people aren't gonna forget about it, like, tomorrow. That's just gonna be a constant problem of every day, people just showing up trying to get a glimpse.
Yeah.
I that's really tough. I wouldn't wish that on anybody. It is, yeah, it's like what am I trying to say? So, very similar to, like, a social media, uh like influencer, I guess you would say, or somebody who just makes like TikToks, or just somebody who makes
Yeah.
YouTube videos. When you
Influencer, yeah, content
Sure,
creator, yeah.
sure. Yeah, like there's a certain kind of connection that the viewer has with you that you don't have with them. So you got to figure, like, there's a whole side of F1 content that me and you probably aren't that privy to. Like, I see them posted from the teams, they'll have their two drivers do like a fucking Subway hoagie challenge or whatever it
Yeah.
is, and just to get some eyes on their team. And there are likely people that are watching that stuff more than they're actually watching the races, seeing
Okay.
these drivers as personalities and, like, dare I say it, their friends, as
Yeah.
opposed to like these like very competitive athletes that are living a very like high performance lifestyle. They're likely seeing them like they would look at a Drake or a Rihanna, or even like who's like a Messi or somebody like this, just a larger than life figure, and they don't really care about the racing.
Yeah, and that's it's interesting because that came up kind of on, and I won't get it. There was a whole kerfuffle about a
I love a good kerfuffle.
there's an F1 podcast out there that are basically these very fratty guys who used to do, I think, a sports betting podcast and started doing an F1 podcast, and they
Okay.
ended up, I think, just because they previously had bigger audiences, getting some like F2 drivers on their podcast, and then
Okay.
basically said to their face, like, oh, no one gives a fuck about whether or not you're a good driver or if you're successful. People just want to see the drama things like in Drive to Survive. And I was like, I mean, that's interesting because I care about all the other results and like things like that. I'm like, I
Mhm.
want to know the behind the scenes, but that turned into a thing in the F1 Twitter world that people were not happy with this podcast because also apparently like there were things like they didn't know that Sebastian Vettel ever drove for Red Bull, or like things that was like, it was like, are you just doing this because there's a growing audience for it, or actually because you like it? But I was like, I would never be face to face with a guy who's trying to make it into the world of F1, like climbing through F2 and everything, and be like, yeah, like doesn't your what you do just doesn't matter at all.
Right.
Like I was like,
Right.
what?
That's just fucked, man.
Yeah, but yeah, there is this side of fandom, and I'm sure it's the same for plenty of other sports where people care about the athletes and like capacities outside of and maybe even more so what they're doing outside of the sport than what they're
Mhm.
doing on the field on game day kind of thing. But it's like doesn't really compute in my brain because that's just not the way that I have my personal fandoms. Like I don't think there's
Mhm.
any real thing that I'm like, oh yeah, like this professional at something. I'm more interested in their personal life and all than I am in like what they're the best in the world at. Um,
Mhm.
so, but I guess there's folks out there. So
Yeah, and people coming to any number of things for any number of different reasons. And just going back to the original point, it's just really unfortunate that Charles has to deal with that. And I just hope that it kind of all clears up quickly and these people realize like that's not the way to do it, man, and just leave them alone.
Yeah, and I mean, like he even said, he's like, "Hey, if you see me on the street, if if I'm at the cafe getting an espresso and you want to say hi and grab a selfie, like cool. But
Hmm.
if if you're coming and knocking on my door at 3 a.m., like don't do
Yeah,
that."
that's fucked up.
But yeah, so hopefully that situation will die down. Maybe just the ignoring of people coming and doing that will hopefully just deter people from putting in the effort to be shot down. Essentially, I don't
Hmm.
know. But getting into some of the racing, this upcoming race in Baku a couple weeks down the road, it is going to be the first sprint race of the season, and so there have been some thoughts. Christian Horner brought it up, and he said he thinks it's ridiculous that they're going to have the first sprint race of the year at Baku on a street circuit. He's like, it from a fan perspective and viewership, like yeah, people want to see it. It'll be exciting because it is an exciting circuit and all, and a cool one to look at. So more racing on it, that's great. But in terms of teams and the potential like damage to cars and things like that, he's like, this just doesn't seem like a good thought. Um, and so between that and there was also this one came out a couple weeks ago, but thought it would be a good time to mention it. But Max had basically said that if they keep modifying the weekend format with all these sprint races and this and that, he's like, I don't know how much longer I'll keep racing in F1 because he's like,
Hmm.
he does not see a lot of value in the sprint races really as a driver. And so I kind of I understand it. Like from it's that balance of what's good for the viewer and what's good for the drivers and everything.
Yeah.
Like extending the season to 20 whatever 23, 24, 25 races as they keep adding more to the calendar. It's like, yeah, like I'm happy that I keep getting to watch more and more F1 races and keep getting to see more racing. But there is that limit of like these guys are human beings that are being put under like tremendous like stress in these cars and
Hmm.
everything to just be like, yep, well, I'll just throw you back in that machinery and do it again for an extra one and all. It's I can understand why people wouldn't like it. And in regard to the sprint races, like I think there has to be a bit more, just in my opinion, a bit more thought put into the sprint races and how those
Yeah.
work. Because
Yeah.
like, if it's gonna be a part, like they're making it a consistent part of F1.
And it's growing. It's a growing part of F.
Yeah,
It was three, now it's six.
but then, especially with things like people needing to take engine penalties and whatever else, if a team can just say, well, we're just going to say screw it in qualifying, we'll take our engine penalty before the sprint race, and then we can just use the sprint race to put ourselves in a decent position. Sprint, and we talked about this already, but like sprint races are just going to become the weekend to take a penalty. Like it's just going to be like, well, I'm just gonna like it's gonna minimize my losses on the
Hmm.
actual race day. And so it's
Hmm.
there has to be some changes, and I feel like they just kind of threw these in and were like, yeah, we want to do this, so we're gonna throw them out there, but like haven't actually worked on like, hey, we had 3 sprint races last year. Why
Hmm.
not do a slightly different style? Get the teams to agree to doing a slightly different style for each of the three, where The first one, you do it like sprint races are now. You do qualifying on Friday after FP1. You go into it, you sprint race, then you have FP3 afterwards or whatever, and that, or however it is set up,
Mm-hmm.
and then you have the race. Why not say, okay, you do that for one, then you do, okay, here's sprint race qualifying, then sprint race. Okay, here's race qualifying, and then do the race, and have different qualify. Like, they could have tested some alternative ways to do this to find which way is best, and instead I think they just like threw it out there and were like, we're gonna do this, and haven't put much thought into it since to see if it actually makes sense, or if it's actually making things more competitive, or if it's just like a way that teams are negating losses that are is
Mm-hmm.
just like a loophole in the system kind of.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and to my eye, it seems like they're just selecting for like, oh, fans must love this. This just must be more exciting. It's more racing. But like you said, it doesn't seem like they've thought about like what the incentives are. They didn't have points for a bunch of the places, and then they were like, okay, yeah, we'll add points for a bunch of them. So unfortunately, we're dealing with them like live testing this thing where most likely next year they're going to go to like, okay, we're going to do four and it's going to be this format. Like, yeah, I think they're just throwing things at the wall, seeing where it's going to go in the future. And for drivers like Max, that is pretty unfortunate. Where like they don't want to be a part of any guinea pig thing. They just
Yeah,
want to drive what they're used to and get points for their usual incentives and this and that.
right.
Um,
Or and with the sprint races, they are incentivizing like people being more aggressive and everything because it is a
mhm,
shorter race. You have to make up these
mhm,
places more quickly, which does typically lead to more accidents and things like that. Which of
sure,
course Max is like, well, if I get pole position in qualifying and then someone just dive bombs me in the sprint race and I start from P19 on the grid just ahead of the guy who dive bombed me, like, why is that a good thing for
mhm.
the sport? And so it I don't know. Sprint races are it's a I understand it's a tough thing to figure out what's best, but yeah, I don't like the whole F1 regular season is just play testing things for them throughout the year.
Yeah, it takes away from the competitiveness, and I have to say, I pretty much forgot about the sprint races. I don't remember them, they just kind of
I don't mark it on my calendar like, oh, this one's going to have a sprint race. I got to make sure that I'm watching on Saturday and
right.
then I'll like tune in on. I'm just like, oh, the sprint race happened. Okay, I'll like go back and watch it. Like
Mhm.
it's not a yeah, it hasn't really grabbed my attention. I still think of it as being the same as like just the practice sessions kind of like in terms of
Almost.
whether I'm going to watch it or
If I'm there, great.
watch it later. Yeah, exactly. Like, yeah, if I'm sitting on the couch doing nothing and it's on, cool. But, um, but yeah, I just think it's I don't know. I hope they do some more workshopping with it before just putting it out for them to do so that they can maybe think into it because something like what Christian said makes a lot of sense. Like I said, going and going into a sprint race, you're expecting people to drive more aggressively. There are less repercussions because you don't lose as many points as if you crash out on a race day. Obviously, no one wants to crash and cost their
Right.
team however much money, but it's more likely to happen. And to do that on a super tight street circuit that already like has its fair share of incidents, it's like that just doesn't sound like it was well thought out or really considered as a whole. And when these teams are already looking at teams are already taking grid penalties for
Mhm.
using too many of certain engine parts. Every now for Leclerc, every time he crashes out and has to get new control electronics put into a car, or gets taken out by someone else and has those parts replaced, he's taking grid penalties. And so, like, we're 3 races into the season. We've got 20 to go, and we're already dealing with that. Like, that exacerbates the issue.
So, what about this angle? Is Formula One for a long time was in a state of stagnation. There was the same teams winning, the same drivers winning, the same officials were in the positions of power for like a good number of years. That is all changed in the last 3. Everything has been just kind of kicked up in the air in like some really important way. So, what if what's going on is it's a FIA that is trying to figure out in real time what modern Formula 1 in the 2020s is supposed to be like. And what are the things that fans are going to want? Why am I saying that? I say that to say, give it 2-3 years, we may just not have sprint races anymore. It may just
Yeah.
be a thing that goes away. So while we talk about it as though it's here to stay and just it's going to have confounding factors, and next year they're going to be wearing clown ears, and then the following year it's going to be clown ears, but in a fuck, what are those called? The big cars, the like
Monster
Gravedigger
trucks.
monster trucks. Thank you. Yeah, now the joke's ruined. But and then it'd be in monster trucks and whatever. So
Yeah.
what I'm saying this to say, with the FIA being in so much flux, the rules changing and everything, man, just be patient.
I am not well, I'm patient with some things, not others, and my teams and the sports I like I'm not very patient with. But
Yeah,
I'll have to
fair enough.
bear with it. But I
But
think
you see what I'm saying?
no,
Like, with
I
them
do.
making so many changes, they could easily just go the other way and say, like,
Right.
yeah, actually, fuck this.
No, I do agree with you there. I think it's there have been a lot of changes. I think my biggest concern is don't feel like I'm seeing much thought, or as much thought as I think there should be, being put into some of the changes. I think obviously there's a lot they're dealing with. They're dealing with car regulations, they're dealing with all sorts of different things. They're dealing with figuring out where we're going to race and how is that going to work and this and that. But if you're going to try and make a significant change, and I'm sure there's plenty going on behind the scenes with sprint races, but I don't feel like they are taking I don't feel like they're taking the opportunities to really figure out the best way to do something. I think they're just going like, yeah, we'll do it for a bit and then we'll just kind of figure it out as we go, instead of going like, okay, here's like pros and cons like of doing a sprint race at this circuit. What if we're trying to get the best value out of this? Why don't we consider these circuits instead? Not because of like the fan base that's willing to come and pay for it, but like where it makes the most actual sense for the drivers, for the teams and everything to do this.
Mm-hmm.
And all. Like I see them trying to do things without considering. They're trying to do things because they have a target for them, whether that's to grow viewership, to get more eyes on F1 through the whole weekend by adding an extra like main event type thing and whatnot. But I don't think they're considering the caveats or the different repercussions of those decisions as much as they are just looking at, are we, does this do what this one target we have is looking for?
Mm-hmm.
Like, not, oh, well, this negatively affects these other areas because of XYZ. They're like, well, did viewership go up on the weekend? And they're like, well, yeah, it went up a little bit. And they're like, oh, then sprint races work. And it's like, that's
Mm-hmm.
what I feel like's going on more than
Yeah.
like the real nitty gritty. I'm sure there's plenty of that in the background. I just haven't seen it.
Or you don't, it's not exactly obvious that they're selecting for the things that you care about as a fan.
Fair.
Likely
Yeah.
likely they just have to go with the decisions that are going to hit that 72-75% mark.
Yeah, and I think I like being someone who, like I said, not everyone cares as much about the racing. People care about things all across the sport of F1, whether it's the racing, the drivers, like the teams, the rivalries. Like, there are other
Mm-hmm.
things other than just like race day stuff,
The
of course.
fashion.
Lewis's fashion in particular, always styling. But I do feel like I consider a lot of like things I see from the teams and drivers where they're
Mm-hmm.
to be pretty highly considered, and I put those as kind of like my top priority in my mind of like what should be focused on, as
Mm-hmm.
opposed to the fan bases and everything, because I'm going, well, without these fucking guys, these 20 athletes out there driving these cars and the teams that are around them, then this sport is garbage. Like,
Right.
so that's why I look at it and I'm like, what they think should be the highest consideration, because it's like those are the guys that are making this exciting.
Mm-hmm.
But I think, like you said, it's something that we'll probably see over the years, and maybe they'll completely flip. Maybe they're adding more races in to just get a larger, or more sprint races in to get a larger data pool to go, is this worth it or not? And they'll decide. But yeah, it was something I'm not sold on the sprint races, at least in the way that they've been handled thus far.
Mm-hmm.
I'll still watch them though, so I guess I'm just working against myself there.
Well, because it does satisfy, like, it's obvious part of their argument is true. Like, it is more F1.
Right. Like, I totally am on board for that small part of it.
Sure.
If they make other considerations with how they do it.
Sure. But I just said it to say, like, playing devil's advocate in the sense of like, even for fans who are doing their best to say that product is not for us, we're watching it.
Right. It's a catch-22 of sorts.
In the way that giving them their flowers, they're close. They're close with the event at having something that is like actually
Yeah.
really enticing.
They're,
Right now, it's just kind of like, well, it's an opportunity for more racing, but here's a long list of cons. It's like, okay, well, we actually may have something here. Like, that's
right.
not bad.
Yeah. No,
Yeah,
I can
that's
feel
cool.
you. I agree, and I hope that they workshop it a bit more and figure out some, or just take more considerations as they're doing it, if they're going to be something that stays. One
Well,
final. Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to bring it all the way back to your original point and say if the finagling, if they're tweaking and doing whatever the hell so much that they're causing top drivers like Max to leave, like that's when it's a problem
Yeah.
where they're like, they're yeah, that's when it becomes something that is not necessary, where it's like, all right, just drop that, because you need talent to make it, even like you were alluding to make it even worth watching to begin with. So
Right.
like you were saying, a bit of a catch 22, but yeah, that's my final thought.
Yeah, no, I think that's a good way to close it out because, like, obviously we do all these sports, esports that we watch and everything. I think you and I especially enjoy because we're watching the best at their craft play. It's not that we are necessary. Like, we obviously have some ties and whatnot to League of Legends and Valorant and some of these other games, but at the same time, it's we like the competitive nature of seeing people
Mm-hmm.
who are really the best at their sport or game compete against each other. So it's, yeah, I think that's just kind of our your and my mo when it comes to these sports and everything. But since we are talking about the best of the best LCS, we've got some bigger news that was announced this past week, and that is or announced or leaked, but that CLG and TSM both are looking at dropping out of the LCS
Mm-hmm.
as teams. So it is a bit concerning, I think, in the grand scheme of things, that two of the oldest LCS organizations are bowing out, at least of the League of Legends scene. I mean, it's it's gonna be weird. I think, to see them not be a part of the LCS anymore. But I don't know if it necessarily spells doom for League of Legends. But I think it is a thing to keep an eye on, especially with the LCS in particular, that two of
Mm-hmm.
these long-standing teams are saying, "Hey, I don't think this is financially profitable for us to continue in,"
Mm-hmm.
because that will be a big deciding factor for other teams coming in and for the league as a whole. So
Yeah, of course. My thing about TSM specifically is like, they are a team that has been marred with so many like social media, let's say, outrage cases, where you have the thing with the Lena and Reggie. Like, they just haven't been the best front facing officers for the company. Therein, I imagine, has rubbed some people the wrong way, as like, oh no, I'm not interested in esports. Like, look who the like company owners are. Like, that's just a sham. And then they go and get interested in Formula One or whatever. So honestly, from that perspective, and from the perspective of TSM not really doing much in the way of like international competition. There are domestic teams that just have far far exceeded them. I think Cloud9 is like way more of a household North American name now than TSM is, and
which is
or ever,
crazy.
which
That's
is crazy. But think about like their pedigree. Like, overall, they have just performed better over the long run than a TSM. Also, having an owner, Jack, who hasn't made very many bad moves with his team, also publicly seems to have a pretty well ran company. I don't know all the ins and outs. I'm sure he hit a lady back in '85, but what I'm
I
saying
don't
is
know,
like,
man. He seems to be like, and I was you led into this so well, which he seems to be just like that dude. Like,
right.
he tweeted out just leading up into the weekend. He said, hey, LCS teams, please reach out if you're interested in our challenger players. They've had a winning record in scrims versus LCS teams, including the C9 LCS team,
Mm-hmm.
all year, and they are ready for the LCS stage. You could even take the entire team, and most likely it's an upgrade. And then clarified and said, for clarity, I'd give up my entire challenger team for zero buyout if it meant that they all can play in the LCS. He said, my promise to each of these players is to develop their skills and give them a platform to get into the LCS. If teams, however, do compete in bids, I'd of course need to consider that. So if
Mm-hmm.
there does become a bidding war, but it's like that's I don't know if he hit a lady back in '85. That's the kind of guy. He's like I would rather all of these players that I signed to my organization and paid and have been successful in everything. I'd rather see them all go be a part of another organization that gives them a shot at the main stage than to just hold them hostage here. And
Right.
that's like, or even to sell their contracts and like barter with other teams. He's just like, take them as long as you're going to give them a starting spot. That's my like one clause on the
Mm-hmm.
transfer deal and everything. But yeah, I think C9. It is weird thinking that they're a bigger potential household name than TSM, who has been. I mean, they're one of the oldest esports organizations in general. Like they are very early, and that's why it's just like it's the longevity thing. It's they
Yeah.
have always been there. Like there is a time before Cloud9. It's not a huge amount of time, but there is one.
No, there is one, but also like think about TSM's footprint in other esports. Like it just really doesn't exist.
Yeah, that's fair.
Like I guess what I'm saying is I'm not going to miss them really maybe as much as I would have a couple of years ago or whatever. But yeah, it's it is a necessary change probably for an industry to grow, maybe come out of those, fucking gamer house roots to become a little more professional or something.
Yeah.
I know that's putting like a lot of blame on just one organization, but that is part of the roots of it, and I imagine for it to make a lot of money, it's got to get away from that in some ways.
Right. It has to
Yeah.
actually be run by a bit like or it's the difference between I think like um so like have you ever watched the show Silicon Valley?
I'm familiar, yeah.
So it's the difference between a startup which with a bunch of guys living in a house coding together and everything trying to make something that they can ship off to someone. There it's the startup. TSM had the startup atmosphere, the startup style. It's very unstructured, very rough around the edges, but like it did create something, and
Big
it
time.
big time, and like was really successful at that. But I guess yeah, like at a point it is like you do sell that off to the business that's like, oh, we know how to take this and use it to its fullest potential and make it the most profitable it can be. You had this great idea, we're gonna make it into like we're gonna use that idea and really just turn it into something bigger. And I guess that's like the big difference. Like Cloud9 was one of the first teams that was really putting emphasis on like kind of a work life balance. Like, oh yeah, we do have a gamer house where all of our people live, but that's because we're like trying to provide housing. We have a
Hmm.
office that they go to scrim and to play, and then when they're home if they want to play and like game, like yeah, we got computers here, but like that's not where you don't eat, sleep, work all in the
Hmm.
same space. So, um, yeah, just a big transition, I guess, time in the LCS, and it'll be interesting to see One, what teams come in and take their place. I mean, we saw NIP come back into the League of Legends world this past year in the LPL and
Mm-hmm.
take V5's spot in China. I don't know. Maybe we'll have other teams that have been around, or see teams from other esports that are being
Mm-hmm.
successful, like an Optic or a team like that, maybe delving into a different realm a little bit.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, I mean there are, I would imagine, a good number of esports organizations ready to scoop up an LCS team. Um yeah. I imagine it won't take too long to fill that role.
Yeah, it most likely won't. But one other note before we get into the finals of the LCS that I just wanted to briefly mention was, of course, Bjergsen's retirement video,
Mhm.
and everything that he dropped. Apparently, he only notified 100 Thieves about an hour before he released the video that he was going to be retiring.
Sure.
Which, I mean, hey, is what it is. You don't really have to be putting in a 2 week notice when you're retiring. But
Yeah, and something like that, like who knows how or why or when or what hit him, but like, yeah, whatever, man. That's like a
yeah,
large life choice. You gotta just you gotta say the thing when you have the courage to say it,
yep,
and
do what's best for you, and
right.
yeah, that's. But it is. I think it's the right time. We it's probably past the right time. I
Past the prime.
remember, yeah, I mean, I remember talking about other professional athletes coming back, talking about Brett Favre and Dominic Hasek, and coming back as shells of their former selves, and oh, how is Bjergsen gonna do? And not that he was bad, but we were flaming him just the other week about the zillion
Mhm.
picks and all. It's like it it may not be the best time for him to have retired. That would have been a little bit ago, or maybe to have stayed retired. But at the very least, like, it's definitely time. And so
Mhm.
I'm glad that he is making that decision. But yeah, it was uh, not the most shocking thing, but also still like caught me. I wasn't quite expecting it. I guess, but I think it's good for
Yeah,
everyone.
yeah, I agree, especially based on our conversations previously. Like, yeah, we obviously can't be surprised at the maybe just the timing, but not at the event. So yeah, I just truly wish him well in his future. Whatever he's gonna go do, I hope he has the best of luck. He truly was one of the more exciting players to watch, not just in the West, not just, in North America, just in general. I thought he was a very, very exciting player to watch. I'm proud to have just, been a witness to a career like that. It's pretty interesting to see a whole player's career pretty much.
Yeah, and I
Other
mean
than NIP.
Copenhagen Wolves.
Okay, fair.
Yeah, but I know what you're going. But yeah, like that's I didn't see him play for them either. Like, it is weird. It's like this some yeah just long standing person. I think it's like especially we've obviously seen players come and go in the LCS over the past decade, but to see someone play out a full career, become one of the greatest players in LCS history, if not the greatest, um, and to see that whole career from them, that's it's pretty incredible, and it's a cool thing to, yeah, like you said, to have witnessed, be a part of, uh, in some essence of that world. So,
Mhm.
but yeah, just a moment, and so congrats on Bjergsen for a great career, and hopefully you
Yeah.
don't unretire again. I really would love to just keep these good memories. So
Yeah, because then
please,
it's just like,
so
all right,
please,
man,
please
you've
don't
got something wrong.
smudge. Please don't smudge the trophy. Just like
Yeah.
leave it up there on the shelf. But
That's
into the LCS finals. Another a crazy stat for another player. Sven was playing in his 10th LCS finals,
mm,
which if I believe I'm correct in saying that he has won 7 of those 10 now after winning this. So pretty damn good success. Looking at this matchup, though, I mean, you have Cloud9, who was the top seed coming into the playoffs and everything. They won the tiebreaker with FlyQuest to be the number 1 seed. Golden Guardians, the 6th seed. So, lowest seed coming into the playoffs. No one really expected them to get here. They got the 3-2 over FlyQuest in that semifinals matchup and coming
mm-hmm.
versus Cloud9. But obviously, I think in just every sense of it, Cloud9 was a pretty heavy favorite going into this matchup.
Yeah, definitely. I was pretty surprised actually by like kind of how sloppy game one was between the two. For a team to be favored, I didn't expect Cloud9 to like kind of look so like sloppy just right out of the gate. Just to your point about them, being the upper seed and having the upper hand in the matchup.
Yeah, and I think that surprised me, and I think most people as well. Golden Guardians, obviously they've gotten here, so they've played some good League of Legends over the past
Sure.
couple weeks, but they definitely have some holes in their team and everything that definitely cause them to have more difficulty. I think on Cloud9's side, I was not super impressed with just their draft in general. It seemed very all over the place a little bit for me. They have a lot of lockdown in CC, but also they have this like charge in with Fudge on the Olaf. It was like just a not team comp fitting pick, but a counter to Kennen kind of pick. And I just wasn't thrilled with their draft in general. It didn't seem like there was a very solid set play style that they could go with that.
Mm-hmm.
Where Golden Guardians is very much just like team fight and let Stixay win the game for them. Like, get the Kennen in and ult, get Sejuani ults out there, the Cassante getting knockbacks and diving in and causing disruption. Same with the Rakan, but just allowing Zeri to free hit. And
Mm-hmm.
Cloud9 was able to shut that down enough in game one, but definitely closer than I expected. And then game two, I think, was Golden Guardians kind of playing out what they wanted to do in game one, just much, much better. Giving Stixay a better champion to work around and position and have the range and everything to be able to do the damage, to have that defensive ult potential as well as having it be offensive, where Zeri, you're dashing through a wall is kind of the only way you can do anything, but it takes you
Mm-hmm.
completely out of the fight, or the only way you can peel for yourself, but it takes you out of the fight, whereas the Xayah really has a lot more potential to negate damage, stay safe and all, while still remaining in the fight.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think another problem for Cloud9 in that second game was Eminus on the Akali. I just don't think he ever really found his footing in the series until, he got the LeBlanc in game 3 and 4. And
Mm.
even then, like, it wasn't the craziest LeBlanc games ever, like pretty low bar, I would say. But yeah, in the first two games, their mid laner Eminus was just kind of floundering, it seems, and having him on the melee assassin of Akali just didn't seem to work. Stixay just had every answer. And yeah, it just seemed like not where that player really wants to be.
Yeah, and I would definitely agree. I think he had his struggles, but um, he wasn't playing poorly, but he definitely wasn't having the. I
He
mean,
was the weakest link
he was, but I would say as a
by a long
whole,
shot.
especially in game 2 as a whole, every lane kind of lost.
Fair.
It was not a it was a 4v5 the entire game kind of matchup. Like
Mhm.
Blabber went 0-4, Fudge wasn't able to get much going in the top lane. Berserker didn't pop off. So it was kind of a all around the board. But yeah, he definitely
Sure.
had his struggles. LeBlanc, I'd kind of in a small way disagree. I thought he played some pretty solid LeBlanc through those games. I mean, he at least, especially in the matchup against Gory on the Ari, as opposed to the Galio, because
Mhm.
you do have a tough early game matchup, and for him to be able to um, still put out the damage and everything. Like, yes, LeBlanc has movement and has some decent damage early, but Ari can wave clear so much better and really put pressure on that mid lane early,
Mhm.
especially having the Lee Sin, the Kennen looking to get some early game leads. I think he held his own pretty solidly in that matchup, and then of course, we saw Berserker and Sven really just dominate that bot lane matchup. The
Mhm.
Lucian Nami was they got scary strong really quick, and just overall a very fast game. So
Yeah, yeah, especially in that game 3, and then similarly there in game 4 as well. But like you said, the LeBlanc had a tougher matchup in that game. But by then Cloud9 kind of had their momentum rolling. Overall, I would say, it was a pretty fun series to watch. I'm not surprised Cloud9 wrapped it up in the 3-1 there.
and that's the weirdest part of it to me is like even though it was a 3-1 and not the closest overall of series, it was still a really fun one to watch. I enjoyed
Mhm.
watching Golden Guardians, and so I'm excited that they'll be playing in the play-in stage at MSI. Like that's a cool thing that will have some of these other teams, and it's not just top team from each region gets to go and play. I
Mhm.
like adding in the play-in stage and all, so getting to see Golden Guardians come in there, and I don't know, maybe they'll be able to keep this hot streak that they've got going a little bit rolling and have a little success. To be honest, I think that I'm excited to see how they do, mostly because I'm curious to see where that bar is for the LCS and where we
Mm.
are comparatively to the other regions. I'm ready to just get that gauge to kind of see how we are, because if the sixth place regular season team that went on a tear to make it to the finals just gets absolutely stomped by everyone, Japan and PCS, everything, I'm going to be
Mhm.
like, oh, okay, so Cloud9 might be the only hope for NA. But if they have some success and are competitive, I'll have a little bit more hope for NA
Right.
than I typically do going into a big tournament, or even for going the rest of the year towards Worlds.
Mhm.
It's a it's definitely a different opportunity to see where the LCS stacks up as opposed to doing like rift rivals across the Atlantic. Like,
Hmm.
so I'm looking forward to that.
Well, and to be fair, I think we'll have our most realistic expectations this year. Obviously,
Oh yeah.
we've been pulling on that copium a little bit for too many years. So hopefully now we'll just say like we'll be surprised when they, go 3-3 in the group or whatever. We'll be like, "Oh,
Yeah,
great."
that's like about what I was hoping for.
Yeah,
I'm
no
not
more like,
like,
"Oh, dude, wouldn't it be sick if they get to the semis, dude?"
and they just crush through through the playing stage and just keep. They're gonna smoke Korea. Yeah, no,
Whoa, man.
ain't gonna happen. I was probably smoking on something to think that that could ever happen. Um, but looking at the Korean teams, we did have a big finals matchup. Top two teams from the summer or the sorry, not summer split, the spring split, with Gen G and T1 matching up in that finals. Um, very very interesting series, I think, as a whole. But not what I expected by any means.
Yeah, me neither, especially based on their round 3 matchup. You could just kind of similarly guess, like, all right, they beat them one time, likely be able to do it again. Weight of history as well. But this time it was a little different for Gen G, which from a final standpoint, kind of really fun. You were always kind of waiting like, oh, when does T1 like bring this back? And you're like, oh shit, they just don't actually. So I imagine for T1 fans a little heartbreaking, but I think for just League of Legends fans, I think it was a pretty good series.
Yeah, I would say I would agree with you there. And looking at the comparison between matchups, like their matchup in the semifinals and all was, at least for picks and bans, very very similar to what we saw in the finals. We're seeing the Annie, the Zeri being perma banned, the Vi being heavily banned out, the Lucian being heavily banned out. So we're seeing a lot of the same kind of things, which obviously are also just in general across the LCK were being typically banned. Um,
Hmm.
but the one thing that did kind of surprise me and uh, catch me off guard in a bad way in game one was the pick of the Varus to go against the Xayah Rakan.
Hmm.
Xayah is so strong right now in terms of, I mean, just I don't know if there is really a weak part of the game for Xayah at the moment. She
Hmm.
scales super, super well. Maybe not as well as other hyper carries, but still really damn well. She's
Hmm.
strong early. She has escape. She has like some safety potential. And with the Rakan, and especially Rakan being such a strong pick right now,
Hmm.
that duo is ridiculous. Varus, I am not sold on as a bot laner at the moment. I think obviously if it gets ahead, it can do huge damage later in the
Hmm.
game. I just don't feel like in the meta where a lot of the picks are Zeri and Xayah and even Caitlyn, Jinx coming out more, these other hyper carries. I
Hmm.
don't know if Varus is the right way to go in that game. And so even though it was just for the one game, I felt like it was one too many. I wasn't super impressed with that pick in the first game.
Yeah, and especially going the on hit Varus route, like you would have thought that bringing the Jace as well. It would have been the lethality Varus, where they could just get like a bunch of poke down before fights. But yeah, Guma going the on hit, and yeah, it just didn't do as much as Pays was able to do. Obviously, 14-0-3, like just a massive scoreline for Pays in that first game. Like it was kind of crazy. So yeah, I would agree. I think the Guma Varus was a bit of a weak spot. Everything else, like their draft, they clearly understand the meta really well. It was just the Varus, and maybe just like a comfort thing for Guma, because I know he played it in the regular season, but just a tough break there for game one. And honestly, we'd be crazy if we don't highlight Doran's Gragas play.
I was gonna say, yeah,
Like
that was the
T
other.
T1 had outs to winning that game. It was just
Yeah.
Doran just set up on them so well. His casks were insane.
Unbelievable.
Yeah,
I literally could not believe it watching it. It was
right,
unbelievable to me.
right.
Like going and body slamming in to hit no one, but then throwing a cask that separates only Faker from the rest of the team right at the end of the game, getting Faker picked off, and then just being able to wipe through the rest of the fight and everything. I was like, it didn't even. It was so good. I was like, he can't have done that on purpose.
Right.
Like it
Right.
had to be an accident. But no, like he played, and in game two as well, he plays so well on that Gragas. It was
Yeah.
extremely impressive from Doran in a matchup of probably the two top laners in the LCK.
Yeah, definitely. And yeah, like you were gonna highlight in game two there, because yeah, they left Gragas up in game two as well. And Genji scoops it up. They're perfectly happy to play it. What's crazy? That was another game. Like again, like it's not even like mistakes. It's just both teams just eking out advantages. Like if you look at that Baron play in game two, where Doran's able to teleport like directly behind them and just like get the insane flank off, so you can see Delight like minutes before that play walk over, drop a ward right before Viego's base timing. You could see nobody pings the ward. Obviously, like it was not communicated at all. And then you watch when T1 goes to approach the Baron, like T1 is in a commanding position of the game at this point. They just win a massive team fight. They all hit their base timers and they run back out to the Baron, but they didn't see Delight dropping that ward over the blue buff wall. Nobody calls them out. They even sweep all the way to the Baron. They just didn't go the blue buff side of the jungle. So that ward doesn't get swept out. Doran's able to just TP right from the bottom lane, right on top of it. And this was literally a game that T1 is winning hands down at this point. And just like that, one cast from Doran flips the game on its head, and Genji are up 2-0 in the series. Like this series is literally hinging on just like specific plays and specific moments that are like, if it didn't go that way, the other team wins.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of how their matchups during the regular season went as well. Like, yeah, T1 went 17-1. They were 2-0 against Genji, but in their matchups against Genji, I was never sitting there like, oh, Genji just got smoked or anything like that. I was like, oh, like these games were tight, but T1 just knows how to win better than Genji did. And in this finals, it was like, especially going down 2-0, it's a tough position to be in. You have to get the reverse sweep. You can't make a mistake from there. And in game three, they do come out and they play a really solid comp. They mix it up a bit, especially in bot lane with the Jinx and Tom Kench. They didn't allow, and the pick also putting Zeus on a tank. you're not allowing Gen G to kind of do a little bit of what they did in game 1 and 2 and
Mm-hmm.
focus that top lane and say, oh, you're going to put a carry up here and you're going to put a more supportive mid laner with the Vigar or the Cassante for Faker. Oh, you're gonna put your eggs in the Zeus basket. Yeah, we're squishing those eggs. Like
Mm-hmm.
they T1 pivoted really, really well, I think, in game 3 and in game 4 to shift up their draft a little bit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I like their
And
draft in game 4 too.
yeah, like I think they made some good decisions there. But obviously in game 4, not being able to pull out the victory, as we're saying, Genji had come out on top. But in game 3, like, Faker did what he was looking to do with the Veigar. He was
Mm-hmm.
looking to use the baby cage to put out damage, poke from afar and everything, and allow the rest of the team to really cause that disruption for Guma to get some kills, for him to continue putting out damage and kind of throw that from the outside. And I think as a whole, Genji on the other hand put all their eggs in the Pays basket, and in the bot lane that game they have very little like overall consistent DPS from the top lane with the Gnar. Once he Gnars out, you're going for the ult, Sejuani ult, Lissandra going in trying to ult and really lock people up. They were hoping Pays would be able to do that, and T1 on the other side really paved the way well for their comp to just win those team fights and
Mm-hmm.
not lose out and to what Genji was trying to do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. And it was big here for T1 to pick up a victory, keep their life alive in the series. And then yeah, game 4 again, T1 strong early game setup, and then the double 80 carry from Pays and Chovy with the Tristana and the Jinx. Dude, they did everything they could to try and kill that Lulu to take them off the the
Mm,
buffs basically, but dude, and then you're just wasting resources on the Lulu. Jinx and Tristana are just like free firing in the late game team fights. Dude, Zeus even has a lead on Doran. Like he even has just like the armor stacking. Doesn't he like solo kill him at
mm,
like early in the game? So
yeah,
like your big meat wall has a massive advantage, but like there's just something about their engage potential, which is crazy because they have a Scion. There was something about their engage, like they just couldn't get on top of the carries, and fucking Chovy and Page just go nuts.
yeah, and I think they didn't have what they needed to deal with the Lulu,
Mm-hmm.
especially as the game went further. Like I felt like Kyria on the Braum, he wasn't getting, like you said, it was the Scion that was really their main source to try and engage.
Mm-hmm.
The Braum I felt like was more of a peel player in a lot of the positions as opposed to trying to really start the fights and put them in a
Mm-hmm.
good spot. But yeah, Genji played it out super well, and with the Lulu especially, like you have to be able to really stunt that bottom lane and put the Lulu behind early,
Mm-hmm.
because later on it just does grow so big, and especially with two hyper carry 80 carries like you had said on the map, that's huge. So
Yeah, the Lulu damage multiplier is kind of absurd. Dude, and just like thinking about those team fights in my head, like it was fucking Lee Sin and Ari like trying to dive through the whole team just to
yeah.
get tags onto Lulu. Like that should not have been their job in that game. And they ended up having to be these like really awkward initiators. You see that moment where Faker gets off one charge of his ult under his own tower and then has to Zonia's anyway. it's like just really, really weird type engages there from T1. So I would just say great draft from Gen G in that position. And then they
Mm.
just played it out really well against the T1 team comp.
Yeah, and I definitely agree. I think they had an impressive series. The only other note that I had was that I really want to keep an eye on as we go into MSI was that in both game 2 and game 4, T1 could have picked the Xayah Rakan, or sorry, in game 2 they could have picked the Xayah, and in game 4 they could have picked the Xayah Rakan, and they opted not to. And so I don't know if that is a Guma comfort thing, but
I think it is. I think he prefers Aphelios, and like if both are available, I think Guma takes Aphelios.
that concerns me because I
Sure.
think the Xayah is a really, really strong pick right now.
Mm-hmm.
And so I really, really don't think that that's the best way to go. But we've got some LPL to discuss, and of course, we'll have MSI coming up, so we'll get to dig in a little deeper as we're leading up to MSI. But yeah, that's one thing that I am a little bit wary of with Guma and T1.
Sure. Yeah. Fair point. Do you want to start at the lower bracket finals for EDG, or do actually the upper bracket final, or like the semis? Because it's like it'll take 5 minutes.
I mean, we'll hit the semis real quick, but
Okay.
JDG 3-0 EDG. All right, let's get down to the I looking at the upper bracket semis. JDG, I think they as a whole have a lot of individual 1v1 matchups that they win in that.
Mm-hmm.
I think in a lot of against a lot of teams, EDG has a lane or a couple of lanes that they are just better and have better players than the other teams in those positions,
Mm-hmm.
where they're able to they had a really solid just spring split as a whole. I mean, tied with JDG for first and with LNG ending up in second overall. But I felt like in this matchup they didn't really have any specific position where they were favored in. From the get go. I think the bot lane leans towards JDG. I think the mid lane leans towards JDG, and I think the jungle and top lane are relatively even. So looking at that, I don't know if it's that much that EDG could have done to win the matchup, but
Mm.
I do
Gotcha.
think that they handicap themselves a little bit, in particular with their jungle picks. Vi in the 3 games, those aren't really. Yes, we've seen the Vi picked here and there. It's Viego has fallen heavily out of favor.
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't super impressed with what they were looking to do with those picks, but JDG as a whole just kind of controlled the games from start to finish in those. It was especially in the top lane or the top side of the map where I think the was the most contentious to potentially sway the matchup. They
Mm-hmm.
focused that really really well. 369 played great. Kanavi played really well on the Wukong, but I mean to the point that I think a Wukong ban should probably be considered. Looking at the finals, but yeah, a good just good overall team play from JDG. They were super, super clean in really every aspect of the series.
Yeah, even in like game one where EDG started off with like a pretty significant gold advantage. They just had like a pretty strong early game as compared to JDG. But then, JDG gets an item and a half, two items on, Ruler and Knight, and they are just able to like run away with it like very quickly. Yeah, I think a lot of the series I'd give up to Kanavi. Really, it's so many of his engages. How many objective secures did he get throughout the series? Like
Yeah.
it he was just playing way better than JJ in a meta where like that 2v2 mid jungle, it's like super important. And
Mm-hmm.
then going back to your point about like, do you ban the Wukong? Yeah, giving a top performing player just the same champion in every game, you probably don't want to do that because by the second half of game two and game three, I mean, he's warmed. He doesn't have to think about anything else
Oh
except
yeah.
Monkey,
Right.
right?
It's just like,
All
oh man, I started the new game, and so my thwacks on the minions don't do as much damage. Like you're
right, that's
not.
it. But everything else is the same,
Oh yeah,
So
mechanics, everything. Yeah.
from that perspective, yeah, I think Kanavi was just able to lock in really quickly. I mean, Knight didn't miss a step in next to him. So yeah, I think JD Gaming just had a really, really smooth series. To be fair,
Yeah, and just impressive and scary for other teams facing off against them.
mm-hmm.
I mean, with Gen G and with T1 at this point, I mean, obviously we'll see in the LPL finals coming up how things shake out for
Mm-hmm.
JDG, but I feel like JDG is probably playing the cleanest League of Legends of any of these teams that have made it to this point in their playoffs and everything, looking towards MSI.
Mm-hmm.
That's they look really really strong. And so obviously we still have a series to look at, but I would not be surprised to see JDG end up with a similar kind of series against the winner of the lower bracket finals here.
Mm-hmm.
And so looking at that matchup, we had EDG and Billy Billy Gaming. Billy Billy Gaming, another one who kind of, I think, was less expected to make it as far as they have. They were the
Mm-hmm.
5 seed. They were able to beat RNG, beat Weibo Gaming. So Weibo, who was ahead of them in the standings, RNG, who had a phenomenal last year, come up, take JDG to a 5-game series, and then go ahead and still win out 2 series after that in the lower bracket to go on to face JDG in the finals. But they have played a lot of games in the past little stretch. They had a 5-game series against JDG, 5-game series against OMG, 5-game series against EDG. It's a lot of League of Legends to be playing there for the Billy Billy boys. You're muted.
It is a lot of League of Legends, but in a tournament format like this, I mean, the more games, just the more warmed up you are,
Oh yeah.
the more in the tank you have, honestly. So I'm not sure if I'd rate that as a problem. If anything, like, isn't that what we talked about for DRX, where like they
Oh
just
yeah.
had so many games during that Worlds?
Yeah, I'm not saying it's necessarily a bad thing. It's just
Sure.
kind of I think it's not ideal that all of their series were as close as they were. Is I think where my mind is more at. Just they've been able to come out on top, which is we've talked about, it's a being able to find ways to win is a signifier of a great team over a good team. You're not just winning the games you're supposed to, but you're finding ways to win games that you're maybe not supposed to, or
Mm,
being able to hang into games that you that shouldn't be in your favor, but you're hanging in way longer than expected and whatnot. And
right.
so going into this matchup, I mean, the biggest point for me as a whole was just Elk in the bot lane for Billy Gaming played phenomenally. Leave is the rookie of the split for the LPL. He is a really solid bot laner on the EDG side, but Elk played just pristine throughout. Um, and the other big highlight, of course, has been being able to get onto these carry champions and really turn it into in a number of games some really solid wins and team fighting and everything between the Jacks, the Renekton. Like they put him in the position to really carry the team, and so I was very impressed by Bin's play throughout the series.
Hmm. Yeah, I thought it was interesting. Still from the Billy Gaming side, I thought it was interesting. Their jungler Shun, his like champion rotation in the series was pretty interesting. Starts on
Mm.
Kindred, ends on Kindred, but has three different champions throughout the other game. Oh, I guess he didn't end. He played game 4 on Kindred. But yeah, just a good number of champs. I thought that was interesting. And starting out on the Kindred, like from the pick and ban, that was like a big surprise for me.
All right.
Just seeing like his normal champion pool, like played a lot of Sedge, just like everybody else. So seeing him go to that kind of like more carry oriented jungler, I thought was kind of a statement move in the series.
Yeah, and I think especially they picked it kind of as a counter to the Wukong being picked and everything.
Hmm.
I thought that was a really just generally solid call. It has the potential, especially early on, to um, challenge and counter Wukong's gank potential. You have a good bit of damage. You have solid mobility to be able to move around the map and everything, and you can kind of stay out of the range of the Wukong a little bit. Um, Plus, later in the game, you end up with the Kindred ult that gives you that lasting ability if you have the Wukong or anyone else kind of dive in.
Hmm.
So I thought it was a really interesting pick. I don't think a ton of junglers will be able to break it out because it is a very different jungler to kind of try and play. Um, I wouldn't be surprised though after seeing this to see some other junglers who have played it in the past pick it up going towards MSI. Blabber has played Kindred a good fair share in the past, so
Hmm.
I wouldn't be shocked to see other teams look at how Shun played that and potentially look to pick it up leading up into this invitational.
Hmm. Yeah, it was interesting in the first game in the series where it seemed like EDG was playing aggressor in a lot of their moves, but Billy Gaming able to kind of turn the tables on them. There was the top dive that got turned around on them, and then the bot skirmish early in the game between Elk and Leave, just some wayward aggression kind of going wrong there for EDG, which I think kind of made them stumble in the series. Where let's say all those moments of aggression like netted kills, this actually looks like a much different series just based on the result of game one.
Mm.
Like, did you feel the same? Did you think like did it appear as Billy Gaming was taking tempo? What did you think?
Um, I felt like EDG was. kind of taking the lead and prior, or at least trying to, but
Mm-hmm.
that I just felt like they were getting outplayed in a lot of the
Mm-hmm.
team fights early
Mm-hmm.
on, and like going into the next games, I felt like the biggest point of contention really became that top side of the map
Mm-hmm.
in a lot of ways. Obviously, like I said, Elk had a really great series as a whole in the bot lane, but they kind of did a lot of that on their own. There was a lot of focus from EDG on the top side of the map, trying to knock Bin down and everything, especially with that Jax pick being so prevalent. Bin has just been such a good top laner that I think, especially on these carry picks, you do have to focus it and really try and put him behind. Otherwise,
Mm-hmm.
you will feel the pain later on. So I did feel like EDG was trying to lead and do what they could to get the leads early on in the game. But they did just in some instances, like Bin with that top lane dive, get just outplayed.
Mm-hmm.
So really solid from Billy Gaming to be able to withstand a lot of that pressure that EDG was trying to put on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but the pressure mounts game two kind of um gives us a look at what the series will be. EDG is able to clap back. Fofo goes crazy on the Ari. Him and JJ kind of teaming together. I thought EDG looked great in game two. It was just that death ball of crowd control that they have. Mako
Mm,
just landing every hook. Ale's belly bumps were beautiful. Like I just think they just had so much CC in those um the like jungle rotations. It
mm.
was it was kind of what's the word? Unfortunate for Billy Gaming. Just there was just so much CC to have to deal with, I think, in game two.
Yeah, and I think it was something that I noticed EG was trying to do throughout the series, and it's something I don't know if I've noticed in. It's more. This is not a. They did something new in League of Legends. It's like I don't know if I had really picked up on this aspect of it, but
Mm-hmm.
in the way that they were trying to start team fights and everything, or trying to draw Billy Gaming to out to into team fights and everything, they I didn't feel like they were necessarily like forcing Billy Gaming into choke points or anything like that, but they very often had good outs available to them in a lot of the team fights they were winning, like um, starting fights kind of on the blue side by dragon and everything, and you have the ability to flash backwards over some of these walls and everything, but still be close enough to re-engage into the fight,
Gotcha.
where Billy Gaming, if they're flashing backwards, they're only getting halfway across the river at that point, and then they're being chased down into these very narrow and easily targetable kind of choke points later on in these fights if they do have to peel back. And so I felt like EDG was doing a really good job of keeping themselves in the physical location where they took these team fights to allow themselves in a lot of instances to have that flexibility and then to be able to kind of chase down Billy afterwards. And I
Mm-hmm.
felt like in in game two and in particular, they did a really nice job of that to allow themselves to get away from, especially like the Sejuani or the Jax jumping in or the Akali, and then after those, the Jax jump and everything is gone, or the Sejuani dash or the Akali ultimate. they were able to really turn that well, and so I was impressed by how they positioned through that. But obviously, with Billy being able to pull out the series as a whole, they managed that well. But it was something that stuck out to me that I don't think I've noticed before in League of Legends, of that exact like kind of positioning and all for those team fights.
Sure. So you're talking about the teams being aware of like when they can take a half committal, but opponent has to full commit into them kind of
Yeah,
thing. Yeah.
exactly. And be able to know and especially utilize the walls and the
Right. The
map
terrain
layout,
specifically.
to be able to kind of put themselves in good positions for that disengage, re-engage, and everything. So
No, I think that's a wonderful observation. Yeah, just to like as a kind of a zooming in on, man, like what is actually happening in these team fights, and that there is a little bit of a push and pull, a little bit of a tempo thing, not just in the macro game, but in that micro game. You have your, it's I'm picturing like fencing in my mind, where you have
great
periods
thought. Yeah.
of like defense, parry, and then you can go on the attack once momentum is yours. And when you break down a team fight, when you slow it down, like these are the things that are actually happening.
Right.
And I like that you talk about the mobility, because Wukong, Gragas, Ari, they're all able to hop back and forth over these walls multiple times. So yeah, I think that's just a beautiful point to just kind of zoom in on these team fights a little bit better, because I mean, we're dealing with, these are some of the best players in the world doing it. So to see them in these very dynamic situations like you're talking about is, yeah, it's really fun.
Yeah, and looking to game 5, the final game of the series and everything, even that very back and forth, we see Ale on the Malphite get a pentakill.
Dude, how sad to get a penta and lose the game
Oh
just
my
3 minutes
god.
later. Like, what the hell?
It's that has to be the worst feeling, to be like, "Oh yeah, got it." And then Billy just comes back and they're like, "Oh, yep, we're going to get a couple picks, take the Baron. Oh, we just stole that dragon with the Jinx rocket.
Yeah,
Okay, game's over." Like,
brutal. Like, it really is like, oh, who got the pentakill? Your top laner? You must have lost the game. Who got the pentakill? Oh, your ADC. Oh, you must have won the game, right? It's
yeah.
like, damn, it's not even good enough. It's not even good enough for a Malphite penta to win.
How the fuck does a Malphite get a penta?
I mean, he was smacking around
I
for a good long
know.
time in that
It's just
fight, which is funny.
just such a crazy thing. A champion that doesn't really do a ton of damage, just getting a penta, cracks me up. But yeah, so we'll have a big matchup between JDG and Billy Gaming here for the LPL finals. We do have a lot decided in terms of teams going to MSI, but we'll kind of wrap that once we have a more full picture over the next week or two. So we'll have, I think, by next week we'll know who's going to be going from Japan, from Latin America, from Brazil. And we'll just be waiting on Vietnam, I think, as the last group next week to have their team decided for MSI.
Sure, yeah, from like all the minor regions, North America included.
So, and I guess LEC will have to wait on their spring champion as well.
Yeah, but they're a major region.
They are, so we care about them more. But to move over, I know you had some Magic that you wanted to chat about and everything. If you want to get into any more.
Yeah, just a little bit. Just kind of like on the note of my seed this week was a packed kind of April schedule full of Magic. I'm just like, it's just really exciting. It's kind of fun because I I don't know how well you'd remember, but there was kind of a period of lull of a there was kind of a lull
Oh, there was
state.
a big like I was like, oh, you got any magic this week? And you're like, we haven't played in like 3 weeks.
Right.
Yeah.
So like if we're not playing, I wasn't really brewing, meaning I didn't
Right.
have any like real new ideas about Magic. It was just kind of like, yeah, if we get to play whatever. But I was just kind of focused on other things. It's fun to have my mind back on Magic, but like in this whole different way. I'm thinking about
Mm.
cards and seeing cards and learning about cards that I've never really even thought about before, and having to like understand cards and mechanics in like kind of a whole new way. And it feels like, you know, I ultimately what I'm getting at is I really enjoy the feeling of being an adult beginner. I
Yeah.
love learning things and I love looking at things in a new way, like cards that you would never consider for Commander. Like
Mm.
they're bad in Commander. They're they're being played as four ofs in this format, and it's like whole decks are built around these cards. So you're just like, what's going on here? Like, okay, I remember asking John. We were playing some Pioneer on Tuesday, jamming some more games, getting some practice in. So something in 1 versus 1 Magic, if you win the die roll, you get to decide if you want to be on the play or if you want to draw. So it's either you get to play a card from your hand first, or you get, turn two gets to draw a card off their library first. In Commander, everybody gets to draw a card and everybody
Mm.
is on the play, really. There's just kind of like there's like a turn order meta kind of, but
Okay.
ultimately everybody gets to draw that card. Yeah, fourth player is kind of behind, but whatever. In 1 versus 1 Magic, I never really thought about being on the play or on the draw, to where I really had to ask John in a way that was like, no, no, explain it to me like I'm five. Like, what is the difference between the play and the draw? Like, what are you really looking for? Because I must have played 20 games of, 1 versus 1 Pioneer Magic, played all the time with Sarah, like, hey, do you want to be on the play or draw? And I never really knew what the fuck I was asking or
Hmm.
what I was agreeing to. And he kind of explained, like, he took a couple of decks and was like, yeah, maybe in this position you'd want to be on the play, in this position you'd want to be on the draw. And one is ultimately, do you want um do you want tempo or do you want card advantage? The first to do something, or you have more information possible, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And that was like really illuminating. I was like, okay, okay. So now that like helped just frame those first turns just in a much better way, but in a way that's like, wow, that's like really simple, but no, it's actually incredibly nuanced,
Well,
right?
yeah, because it depends
Um,
what you have in your hand. Because, like, say you are like, oh, I'll go on the play and everything. Well, I hope that you would have some mana available in your hand automatically to be able to actually do something with that play. Whereas
right.
if you're going to be like, okay, no, I'll take the draw, like maybe you have to do that because you don't have enough lands or whatever else to be able to really get the ball rolling to get you where. So as opposed to like um, milling your hand and going down a card like you would in
Mm-hmm.
Commander, you're like, okay, maybe I don't have what I need in this hand now for this Pioneer deck, but maybe the draw is a better option then, because then I can potentially pull something that'll put me in a better position and everything with this hand.
Mm-hmm.
So would you say you're used to being a commander, but now you're just a pioneer?
Well, I'm learning how to be a better pioneer. Yeah. That's kind of the gist of it. And then
Yeah.
there's just like, so this weekend, like I was talking about, is the new
Mm.
set pre-release. We're gonna hit that tomorrow, which is gonna be really fun. Next weekend then is another like small pioneer event, and then that Sunday, the 30th, April 30th, is like a much bigger event where hopefully I'll be able to use all this information in some way. So it's just like it's just been fun to be back brewing. I'm like going back through my collection a little bit, saying like, oh, I think I have a copy of that card. Oh shit, I have 2 copies of that card. Cool. Because I'm like trying to improve the sideboard and just all sorts of stuff. So it's just been fun to be brewing and getting back into Magic recently. And yeah, I've been tinkering with some ideas here, as like maybe how to I don't know, like make it a little more interesting, like track it in some way. I have like I've been taking notes on some of the matchups, but I've been thinking about like maybe how to organize my thoughts with it a little better. But yeah, overall it's just been a lot of fun. But that's enough Magic out of me. Aaron, why don't you give us our flavor of the week here? Start us off.
Sounds good. I'll go pretty quickly through mine. But yesterday I had kava for dinner.
Ooh.
Really love it. It's phenomenal. We've made it at home a couple times, and it's really good at home. But it was nice to be able to, before the CPR course, just kind of grab something quick, have something nice and tasty there, which I'm always a fan of. But I will say, just on a side note, I'm bummed a little bit because I love to get the braised lamb, and I
Mm.
think previously I didn't realize how either it didn't have as much of an upcharge on it that I would just be like, yeah, like whatever, I'll just take the upcharge. But now it's like $3 more than just like the base like meats or whatever to get the
Hmm.
braised lamb, and I'm like, I don't know if it's worth it. I'm such a I'm a cheapskate with those things. Sometimes I'm just like, I'll just get the honey chicken instead. Like it's still delicious. I'm just like me some braised lamb. So,
Yeah, it does sound pretty good.
but then for my music this week, I've it's kind of a sort of conundrum I've run into. I've been watching, like seeing on TikTok, my algorithm keeps putting EDM mixes and whatnot into my feed, and I've been enjoying them, but I listen to most of my music on Spotify. I don't own most of my music. I'm streaming almost everything. And a lot of these things that I'm seeing on TikTok and whatnot are people's individual mixes that maybe are on their SoundCloud or are on or maybe it's just like a live mix of these different songs and
Hmm.
whatnot and everything. And so it's difficult because I've found some of these like songs, but then they don't sound nearly the same as they do in these clips that I'm seeing of it being mixed
Hmm.
and everything. So it's like it's a little funky because at the same time, I'm not going to spend my time digging through SoundCloud to put together things to listen to where I can't like mix it all together. Like I can just throw my Spotify playlist on
Right.
shuffle and everything. So it's like I'm enjoying those things, but I don't know if there's a great way for me to um I'm blanking on the word, but for me to like take them all in the way that
Hmm.
I'm enjoying them there. Uh,
Right.
so it's something that I'm hoping I can at least, or maybe find some different mixes and all, but just a lot of stuff isn't on Spotify in those kinds of veins. So
Hmm.
kind of a tough one with that, but for my visual medium this week, it is the show Ted Lasso. It's been back for a couple weeks on Apple TV. Colleen and I love watching it. I am really enjoying this new season, and I it's one of my favorite shows right now. To really enjoy. So I've just been jamming on that. But that is my flavor of the week for this week.
Nice. I'll start where you left off. My visual medium here. Sarah and I have been continuing our watch through of Avatar. We just finished season 2, book 2, Earth. And we've gotten a couple episodes into book 3, Fire. So we're getting towards the end, and it is just, oh my god, is it a heart wrencher? It's so good. But yeah, I've been enjoying that. My food here for the week. We found a new hot sauce as like a
Ooh.
dipper. You can squirt on stuff. You can squirt in other stuff, and it's got truffle butter in it.
Okay.
That was kind of the big sell. And man, it's got a really great taste. We really like it. Good heat, good flavor.
What
Can't beat it.
what is it? Give it a little shout out. Also, I want to
Ooh,
probably try it. So
ooh.
yeah, okay. Send me a text.
Yeah, it's like Mrs. Something. Yeah, I can send it to you.
All
And then my
right.
music here for the week, bro. My man does not miss. I went back to Vince Staples' self-titled
Ooh.
album from I think like a year and a half ago.
Yeah.
Vince Staples, and then the follow-up with which came out like last year. Ramona Park broke my heart, bro. They are so good.
I love
I
Vince.
I've been listening to them like nonstop. I put a bunch of hours in on the Shutoko server, just like driving, cruising, listening to them. Bro, it is so good. Really, really good stuff. So just a big shout out to Vince Staples for my music here for the week.
I've been
But
stuck a little bit, so on like I not knowing who to listen to, what to listen to. So you're throwing something in my mix, which I
nice.
appreciate. So
Nice, dude. It's a good place to start, get back in the groove. But yeah, this is another good ep here. Aaron, why don't you take us out?
yeah. So as always, everyone, thank you for listening. We do really appreciate it. We love putting this out. So check us out on Google Podcasts, Spotify. Check us out on YouTube for the video version, and of course, hit us up on Twitter at tall and short of one, the number one. But yeah, thank you all for taking the time to spend with us, and we're looking forward to next week with you.
Yeah, tell your friends. New episodes every Thursday. To our loyal listeners, we apologize we're a day late here.
I got a text this morning about where is the pod, so that made me feel pretty good. So
Yeah,
shout out to
that's
Shane.
awesome. Hey, thank you, Shane. But yeah, just thank you very much for listening. Thank you for staying tuned. But yeah, this has been another episode of the Tall and Short of It podcast. Peace out, everyone.
See ya.